What I want to do today is basically jump into the mindfulness session straight right off the bat. Okay, so we're going to do that in just a couple of minutes, and that way we'll have more time for Q&A at the end. And if it turns out that we are done with the questions, we can just sit around and chat. And if it turns out that that's done too, then maybe we can even end the session a little bit early. That's right, Iris. Good thing, bad thing, who knows that Swati hasn't joined us. I think it's actually a good thing because, we get to kind of take another breather for a week before we reassemble. Kevin here, who's been attending every single session, he had a great idea that he emailed to me after the last session saying that why don't we have a kind of a poll of sorts where we ask everybody, here's a review of all the 7 sins. Which set of sins are you most guilty of committing consistently, kind of a thing. And so I will make sure that we have that poll when we reassemble next week. At the start of that session, I'll administer the poll so that you guys can fill out. And so we can have a kind of a quick visual, I suppose, on which of these sins are most prevalent, perhaps, in this group. Okay, I think that'll be interesting to see. Okay,
Maybe
so
also, which one have you been able to somehow work on? Like get some results.
right. So sorry, Elena, I think you said that, that will allow us to look at which of the sins that we need to work on, correct?
I was just saying maybe we can also include information about which ones are you trying to work on, or have you been more successful at working on something like
Okay,
this?
that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea too. So maybe 2 questions, and maybe there'll be other questions that I'll think of as well. And if you think of any questions, you can email it to me, raj@happysmarts.com. Okay, so some of you guys are messaging me directly. I'll take those comments a little bit later, guys. So we're going to jump into the practice. So some of you might remember this practice that I'm going to walk you through from Aloha. It was one of the kind of later videos, and the mindfulness practice is called presence practice, and it was invented, founded, thought through, whatever you want to call it, by my good friend Vijay Bhatt, who runs a consulting organization called Roots and Wings in India. And the way that Vijay articulates it now, I've been practicing this mindfulness session for many, many years now, maybe 5-6 years, and I've made it my own. I've kind of added some elements to it that are idiosyncratically my own. But the foundation of the practice that I'm going to walk you through is Vijay's. And the way that he described it to me one time was that the idea of presence practice is to get to experience a state that might be called a state of presence. And the state of presence has a certain set of features, and I'm going to talk about what those features are in just a minute. And the idea is that this state of presence is a dominant state to be in. That is, no matter what is happening in your life right now, it's a good state to be in. It's a good space to occupy. So imagine that, good things are happening in your life. The sun is shining, or the sun is shining inside your head at least. And everything is going well. Your career is going well. Your relationships are going well. And you're feeling healthy and, in a good headspace. In that state, a state of presence would be awesome. It'll just enhance the joy that you get out of everything. Now, imagine the opposite is going on, that things are not going well. Maybe you're feeling sick. Maybe your relationships are not great. Maybe things at work aren't going so well. Even in that state, it's better to be in a state of presence than to not be in a state of presence. So no matter what, it's better to be in a state of presence than to not be in a state of presence. And better from what perspective? Better from multiple perspectives. Better from the perspective of how you feel in a state of presence. If things are going well, then the joy is multiplied. In a state of presence, if things are not going well and you're emotionally down, then that negativity is divided. Okay, it's mitigated. So from that perspective, a state of presence is good. It's also good from the perspective of cognitive clarity, in having a better sense of what might be the next thing to do. for example? How do you respond to somebody? Or what decision you take, what choices you make? You're likely to be clearer and make a better decision, better in the sense that the decision that has the lowest negative consequences and the highest potential for positive downstream consequences, if you're operating from a state of presence. You're likely to be more other-centered rather than just self-centered. That is more altruistic in a state of presence. So from that perspective as well, a state of presence is a good thing to aspire to be in. Okay, so that's the idea. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys to kind of join me in this practice. And we're going to begin by sitting with our back straight. Okay, and you can prop it up against a chair, or if you're sitting on a bed, maybe use a pillow below your back, so that your spine is kind of erect and straight. You can sit in a kind of cross-legged fashion. I'm very used to it, and I'm very comfortable sitting in that cross-legged fashion, even if I'm on a chair, which is what I'm doing right now. But if it's uncomfortable for you to do that, you can just sit on a chair like you normally would, with your legs down on the ground. But make sure that your legs are kind of nice and stable, so that you have a nice stable foundation, and you're not, imbalanced. Okay, so I'm going to close the chat box. And so I'm going to invite you guys to close your eyes and take a deep breath through your nose and exhale through your mouth. And maybe even make a little sigh or a sound when you're exhaling out. Okay, so take a nice deep breath. Exhale out. One last time. All right, so I'm going to invite you now to open your eyes again for just a little bit. We're going to do a practice, 15 rounds of it, a kind of breathing technique called Bhastrika in India. Some of you from India might be aware of what this technique is. It's a technique to kind of re-energize yourself, but not in a necessarily in a kind of a stimulating, frenzied fashion, but energize yourself in a fashion that makes you feel calm, actually. So if you can imagine in your mind's eye a 2x2 matrix, okay? One dimension is how alive you feel, how energized you feel, okay? So very awake, very energized versus not, feeling dull, right? That's one dimension. And the other dimension is how relaxed or stressed or tense you are, right? So yeah, either very relaxed or not at all relaxed and very stressed out. Typically what happens is when we feel energized, we are awake, right? And we go through life also feeling stressed in those awake moments, in those energetic moments, right? It's when we are ready to go to sleep that we feel dull and tired, but also perhaps more relaxed. Okay, and the idea in a lot of these mindfulness practices, I would say, is to kind of occupy that top right quadrant where you're feeling relaxed, but you're also very energetic, right? So it's a kind of a relaxed, energetic focus on things. Okay, so and the Bhastrika practice definitely gets me into that awake, energized, but also relaxed state. And I'm curious to see what it does to you. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. This is going to take 15 rounds of breathing hard, all right? But with also a physical movement associated with it. Okay, so hold your, bunch up your fingers like a fist and hold it up next to your shoulder or just a little bit above it. And what we're going to do is we're going to raise it high as if we are reaching out to the skies. Okay, and when we do that, we're going to breathe in sharply. Okay, and then when we lower it, we're going to do it with quite a bit of force so that it kind of hits the side of our body. Okay, and we're going to breathe out. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate, and then after that I'll count to 15 and you guys can follow along with me. Okay, so here we go. That's how it goes. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to close my eyes because it's a little bit awkward to perhaps be seen doing this, right? It's a little bit of a strange movement and thing to do. So if you feel awkward or uncomfortable that others are seeing you, just close your eyes, okay? And if everyone's closing their eyes, of course, no one's seeing anybody, right? Anyway, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to do it for 15 breaths, and I want you guys to do it at your own pace, right? But this is happening quite fast. It's not very slow, right? It's happening quite fast. And so most likely all of us will end around the same time. And what we are going to do after we end the 15th round of breathing is we're going to place our hands somewhere where it's comfortable and stable, maybe on the arm of your chair, or maybe on your lap, maybe on your knees. And we're going to for about 10 breaths after it, I just want you to kind of focus on the sensations that the act of breathing causes on various parts of your body, or a particular part of your body. Okay, so after we finish these 15 rounds of Bhastrika, we're going to close our eyes, continue to keep our eyes closed, and just focus on the sensations caused in various parts of our body by the act of breathing. You don't need to control your breathing, just let the breathing be. Chances are that you're going to notice that your breathing is slowed down. So you are in that state of being awake and energized, but still relaxed. Okay. That's what happens to me. And I'd be curious to see what your experience is. Okay. But we'll talk about it at the end of the session after the whole presence practice is over. All right, so let's begin the Bhastrika now. And I'm going to start by closing my eyes and with the first breath. So I just completed 10 rounds of inhalations and exhalations after the Bhastrika. And I definitely feel this sense of relaxation combined with being aware, being awake, feeling energized. So let's get into the presence practice now. And I want to talk a little bit about the set of characteristics or features associated with a state of presence. And as I talk about these features and characteristics, I'd like you to kind of reflect on the extent to which you're able to experience these characteristics yourself right now. And the idea is to observe whether these characteristics apply to your experience right now. That's one part of it. But another part of it is also to very gently motivate yourself to experience that characteristic as well if you're not experiencing it. Okay, so it's both observing as if you were a completely disinterested, unbiased party, almost like a fly on the wall observing you, but also another part where you're willing yourself to experience that characteristic. So let me start with the very first characteristic. And this is the foundation of a state of presence. The foundation of a state of presence is a relaxed body. A relaxed body. Of course, it's easier to feel relaxed when things are going well, when you're feeling calm and tranquil, serene. But it's also possible to be relaxed in your body when things are not going well. All of us have problems, all of us have issues, all of us have challenges. And the idea in the presence practice is to carve out a time that's your own time, in which you keep at bay all the challenges, all the stresses, all the problems at arm's length, so to speak, and give yourself that bubble, that space, in which, despite all those challenges, you get to experience this feature, this foundation of a state of presence, a relaxed body. So we're going to take stock of various parts of our body and assess how relaxed they are. And if they're not, so be it. But also set the intention that that body part get a little more relaxed than it is currently. And maybe there are parts of the body that are stressed, that are tight, there's tension there, maybe even a little ache or a pain. Just observe it. Don't get feverish in your desire to relax that part of the body. Just gently set the intention to relax that part of the body. And I've discovered a very good way to get that body part relaxed is just to observe whatever's going on in that body part. Even if it's a negative sensation, the mere act of observing that negative sensation tends to relax that body part. So let's start at the top of our heads, the scalp, the forehead, the eyes, nose, cheek, neck, shoulders, arms, the upper back, lower back, stomach, abs, buttocks, thighs, the knees, calves, ankle, feet, toes. And let's do another scan, this time going from our toes all the way up. And I'm not going to speak out each body part. I'm just going to be silent for about a minute. I'll let you scan through your body. So the foundation of a state of presence is a totally relaxed body. There's different techniques to get your body to relax if it's not very relaxed. And one of them is actually to kind of clench your whole body, get it really tight, including your face. Screw the muscles of your face on your body, screw it up, and clench your fists, your buttocks. Just clench everything and then hold it for about 10 seconds and then let it go. And that technique is particularly useful just before something stressful is coming up, like a presentation, for example. In 2017, I was invited to give a TED talk with one of India's most famous actors, Shah Rukh Khan, as the MC. And it was watched by 17 million people around the world live. And the organizer of that event, a wonderful lady called Juliet Blake, who now actually coincidentally lives in Austin, she told me about this technique. Just clench all your muscles just before you go on stage, hold it for about 10 seconds and let go. So you might find that a useful technique before making a presentation, for example. Okay, so the foundation of a state of presence is a totally relaxed body. And like I said, if your body is not totally relaxed, set the gentle intention for it to be relaxed. And despite that, if it doesn't get to be relaxed, so be it. Remember, dispassionate pursuit of passion. You set the goal, try and pursue it. If it doesn't happen, good thing, bad thing, who knows? The first sign of a state of presence, the foundation of a state of presence is a relaxed body. The first sign is even breath. The breath comes in and goes out in a nice, slow, even fashion. Typically, the breath becomes longer, deeper, not staccato. And there is a certain deliciousness with the air that gets breathed in, and a certain relaxation that sets in when you breathe out. Your whole body is engaged with the act of breathing, not just your lungs. It's like your body is absorbing air and nutrients from the air and letting go of toxins, pollutants with the exhalation. The first sign of a state of presence is even breath. The second sign is a cool, calm, and collected mind. A mind that's not jumping around. A mind that's capable of focusing on only one thing at a time. Right now, hopefully it's focused on what I'm saying. So that's the second sign of a state of presence, a calm mind. A mind that you could even will into not having any thoughts. So check in with your breath. Is it even? If it's not, set the intention for it to become even without controlling it. Check in with your mind. Is it cool, calm, collected? If the breath is not even, if the mind doesn't calm down, so be it. The third sign of a state of presence is an open heart. There's different ways to interpret an open heart. One interpretation is that you're childlike, not childish, childlike, innocent, open, curious, seeking a sense of enjoyment, fun from every moment, just joyous, embracing of whatever life throws at you, curious to see what the next moment brings. So check in to see if that's the state you're occupying. If there are a lot of challenges, a lot of stresses, probably not. But set the intention to occupy that space, that emotional space of curiosity, of joy, of learning, growing, seeking. Foundation of a state of presence is a relaxed body. First sign, even breath. Second sign, calm mind. Third sign, a warm, open heart. The fourth sign is something that Vijay calls sensitive sonar, just a fancy name for the ability to tune into subtle, fleeting, nuanced sensations that are going on in and around all of us all the time. So almost like you have antenna, like a snail out, sensing everything that's going on. Typically, we recognize and notice and become conscious of what might be called gross sensations, a heavy pain somewhere, a dull ache somewhere else, dampness, coldness in one part of the body, a loud sound, traffic perhaps. But if you have a particularly sensitive sonar, then you will be able to detect much more fleeting, much more interesting, much more subtle sensations that are going on all around us and inside of us. And the idea is to try and notice those subtle, fleeting, nuanced sensations. So I'm going to stay silent for about 30 seconds. And in these 30 seconds, I want you to notice some sensation in some part of your body that is so fleeting, so subtle, so small that unless you had a really calm mind, you would not have been able to notice it. And these sensations may be sensations of maybe an itch or dampness, pressure, maybe even tension. But it could also be a sensation that doesn't have any name. The idea is not to name it or categorize it, but to feel it. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to tune into, say, a couple of these sensations somewhere in the body. Foundation of a state of presence is a relaxed body. The first sign is even breath. Second sign is a calm mind. Third sign is an open heart. Fourth sign is sensitive sonar. And the fifth and final sign of a state of presence is something that Vijay calls energetic induction. Again, a fancy name for just a conviction that we are all interconnected. The whole universe is interconnected. We are all seemingly separate beings, but underneath it all, we are all deeply interconnected. One way to understand this final aspect, it's more of an experience, but if you want to understand it conceptually, is to remember that the most well accepted theory of the origin of the universe is the Big Bang theory, according to which about 14 billion years ago, everything that we see in the universe, all the galaxies, the hundreds of billions of galaxies and hundreds of billions of stars in each of these galaxies, were all occupying a space smaller than the tip of a pinhead. So everything that we see, everything that we touch, we smell, all came from that moment. There isn't a single particle in existence right now that did not have its origins in that moment 14 billion years ago. We are all made of stardust. We all came from the same place. You were never really born. You never really die. Just visit this body. As does everyone else. We're not really separate. We're all the same. We're all interconnected. And this recognition, this conviction makes it much easier to truly be compassionate toward everyone else, to naturally exist in a state of loving kindness meditation. So I've talked about the foundation of a state of presence. I've talked about 5 features or characteristics of a state of presence. And the idea is to check in to see the extent to which you are experiencing each of these characteristics or features. And if you're not, to set the intention to will yourself to experience those features. And if you don't, that's fine. You'll get another opportunity to do it. And even if you do experience it right now, doesn't mean you will get to experience it the next time around. And that's fine. But if you do experience it, and I'm sure that all of you have experienced at least a little bit of some of these features, then to be grateful to have the opportunity, to have the luxury, to have the freedom to be able to experience these features of the state of presence. So in addition to these features of the state of presence, there is also a recognition of some truths. So I'm going to make some statements now, and feel free to repeat these statements after me. And you can do it loudly, you can do it in your own head, We're all muted. All of you are muted. So no one else will hear it. So it's totally fine to speak it out loud. So I'm going to make 3 assertions about the state of presence. And I'll follow those 3 assertions with a statement of fact. The first assertion is this, and you can repeat after me. The reality of this moment is that I have nothing to defend. The second assertion is this. The reality of this moment is that I have nothing to promote. The third assertion is this. The reality of this moment is that I have nothing to fear. These 3 assertions should sound true to you to at least some extent in a state of presence. If they do not sound true to you, then you're not fully in a state of presence, and that's fine. But again, set the intention to feel that you have nothing to defend, nothing to promote. You're fully authentic. And that full authenticity combined with beautiful vulnerability comes when you have nothing to fear. It's a beautiful state to be in, but also difficult. But the aspiration is to occupy that space. Now, the statement of fact, and you can repeat that statement of fact after me, and after that, we will end the presence practice, and we will reflect on our experiences and maybe take some questions. Okay, so the statement of fact is this. You can repeat after me. The only reality of this moment, the only reality of this moment is that I am here now. So you can gently open your eyes now. Stretch. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm looking at the comments, and Carol says she had a hard time getting in today. Sorry about that, Carol. I don't know if you joined in right from the beginning of the presence practice or midway through, but hopefully it was a good experience. Yeah, things are back to normal in Texas, slowly hobbling back to normality. Komal. Okay, so let's take any comments, reflections that you have on any of the stuff. Yeah, so Bob, you felt more relaxed. Kevin has not done that before. And Iris says it was amazing, but different mixed emotions. Okay, that's great. Yeah, just Lindsay, thank you for saying that. You know, I just thought one of the options was to not even meet this week, but then I thought, you know, just for the sake of continuity, if nothing else. And, you know, I do this presence practice every single day. at least for 5 minutes, right? Just before I go to sleep is when I do it. And I thought I'd just share it with you, and hopefully some of you guys found it to be useful. In my experience of leading people in the presence practice in my MBA classes, for example, there's a non-significant group of people who actually find it very, very difficult to do it. Um, the MBA crowd is, of course, a different crowd from you guys. You guys are more, I think, first of all, I think there's greater level of self-selection, right? You guys have chosen to be here. A lot of times the MBAs, they just have to take an elective. And so, and my course might be the only course that fits their schedule or something. So there's that going on. But also in an MBA program, people are generally very stressed out, right? There's a lot of competition and social comparisons and so on. Anyway, I mean, for a variety of reasons, they find it difficult. And I'm sure that some of you guys here might have found some of the aspects of it difficult too. Just to be able to sit in a spot on a chair or a bed or wherever, for 15, 20 minutes is surprisingly tough for a lot of people. Okay. So kudos to you guys for being able to do it, honestly. Okay. All right. So, um, all right. Christina sent me a message saying that she really liked it. Thank you, Christina, for saying that. And I don't think I saw the last few comments. Um, yeah. So, Elena, over to you. Any questions that have come up or anything that you want to ask, maybe? Um,
No, not yet. Well, this first question: Who is the person who created this practice? Vijay, right? You said.
Vijay Bhatt. And if you've taken my Life of Happiness course, he's one of the guest speakers. He comes in toward the end of the course, um, when I talk about mind addiction as the sin and mindfulness as the practice. This is the exercise for that module. So his meditation is on YouTube. I can send you the link to it, actually. Let me just kind of get it and paste it in the chat
The
box.
difficult I had with this meditation was that when you talked about the open heart,
Mm-hmm.
I felt uh, like a mixture of positive emotions and the good things, and I started getting excited, and that kind of unbalanced me because I thought about all the good things and the
Mm-hmm.
gratitude and things like that, and I felt like it wasn't letting me be calm, because I was already getting excited.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's actually a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Um, so, you know, typically people say that it's difficult to stay mindful when you're feeling stressed and anxious because, the stress and anxiety makes you want to solve those problems. And here you are just sitting and observing things. Um, stress and anxiety promote action orientation, right? And it's difficult to just sit. And it is also difficult to observe these thoughts without getting caught up in them when you're stressed out. But what you're bringing up is kind of the opposite phenomenon where joy and excitement can also make it difficult for you to just sit, and be mindful. That's an excellent point. And I actually think that that happens more frequently to me than being, not being able to be mindful because of stress. And I'm very grateful for that, actually. If I have to have a problem of not being mindful because of one or the other reason, then I'd rather be it because I'm feeling joyful and excited, right? But it is something that, for those 10, 15 minutes, you just put that excitement at bay at some level and say, look, that's fine. It's great that all these things I'm excited by are going to happen, or I'm looking forward to those. But for now, my aim is to um, be in this moment. And so you kind of, train your mind to let go of that excitement at some level, right? So yeah, but thanks for sharing that.
We have a question from Ramakrishnan. Is the Bastrika breathing part of getting into the state of presence? Is it
Yeah.
part of this
Mhm.
meditation?
No, I mean, it's not part of what Vijay Bhatt has. If you go to that link, you'll see he doesn't do the Bastrika. It's just something that I've added to it. I don't know how you guys, felt after the Bastrika. So, obviously, no need to be polite and just say positive things, right? I mean, if it turned out that it actually kind of made you more stressed out or whatever, I'd love to hear what you honestly felt after the Bhastrika part of it, the initial part. It calms me down, but at the same time wakes me up, right? So that's why I start with that. It makes it easier for me to then get into the presence practice. So Komal says that her arms got tired. Um,
I felt like my blood rushed into the head, and I felt like maybe a little bit of slight headache, but just for a
yeah,
while.
yeah, maybe even lightheadedness or something like that, right? I think what it does is it just increases the amount of oxygen in your bloodstream. Just
Yeah.
kind of breathing rapidly and fully, right? And that can have the effect of, I think, making you feel a little bit lightheaded. I don't know the science behind why, eh, breathing like that makes you feel somewhat lightheaded and maybe even gives you a bit of a headache, like you said. I've actually stopped experiencing that a long time ago because I do this almost every day. I think my body's just gotten used to it, you know.
So you do
Um,
Pastika every day with the presence meditation in that sequence.
Mhm. Just before I go to sleep, I do the presence practice, and I also do some other things. It's actually evolved into a 40-minute kind of a routine. Lots of things going on.
Plus the
But
journal.
yeah, I write the journal, and then I do this, and then I go to sleep. Yeah.
We have this question from Munin. Why is that sometimes it becomes so difficult to bring in the happiness in our mind when we really require it, when we are stressed or disturbed due to some reasons or the other?
Hmm.
Well, maybe because happiness is not really like a state of like something more permanent. It's not happiness. Maybe joy could be easier to attract.
Hmm. So, you know, yeah, that's, I think, partly it. It really depends on what you mean by happiness, Munind, right? But if you define happiness in a very broad sense, I like one definition of happiness a lot. And that definition is when I'd rather not be somewhere else doing something else. I'm happy if I'd rather not be somewhere else doing something else. That is that if being here right now is completely okay with me, then I'm happy, right? And in that definition, of course, it's easier to feel that way if you're actually feeling a sense of pleasure or what's conventionally thought of as positive emotions of love and things like that. But you can also see how you might be able to occupy that space even if things were not going well, right? If you were just accepting of the moment completely, then I would say you're happy. And you could be angry and happy, you could be anxious and happy, and you could be in pain and be happy in this definition. And at some level, that's the idea, is to get yourself to be in that headspace so that no matter what life throws at you, you're happy, right? So that's the conceptual aspiration, but to actually experience it, it takes a lot of work and a lot of unconditioning yourself. Why is it that we tend to reject experiences in which we go through something that's negative, either bodily pain or emotional negativity? I think a lot of it is because we've been taught to try and get out of that, right? Or evolutionarily, pain is an indication that something is not right, and so you need to kind of change it. Okay, and you could want to change it and yet be accepting of the pain as well, right? So it's possible to be, I think, happy in this definition even with the pain. And I think also what happens is a lot of times we invite these negative experiences and pain into our lives just through making wrong decisions or through having a wrong set of, quote unquote, wrong set of perspectives on things. So, if, for example, your perspective is the way to success or happiness is to acquire more money and be superior to other people, that's a set of value systems that is driving your decisions. And that is naturally going to invite more misery and pain and unhappiness into your life. right? And it's going to be more difficult for you to then be totally okay with being here right now. Whereas if you operated from the perspective of, look, I mean, I do need money, I do need resources up to a certain point, but beyond it, what's more important are things like relationships and doing something that I truly love to do. I'm intrinsically motivated by it, and experiencing new things, right? Um, then I think that you're more likely to experience a lot of more positivity in your life. And so it's easier to exist in that state of, I'm totally okay with being here right now. So it's a combination of things, right? I mean, you set or you adopt the quote unquote right set of values. And that's what we talked about in the first 7 weeks of this workshop, is replacing, each of these sins with a set of habits that make it more likely that positive things happen. Then it's more easy to exist in that space of, yeah, I'm okay with whatever's going on right now. But also toward the end, we talked about how even if things don't work out, right, dispassionate pursuit of passion, good thing, bad thing, who knows, you're still able to occupy that space. So it's a combination of kind of setting your life up in such a way that more positive things are more likely to happen, but also accepting that it's not always going to be according to what you want to happen, and being okay with it. So kind of adopting that ability to be flexible and go with the flow, etc. So if you have both of those things happening in your life, then chances are quite high that for most of the time you're going to be totally okay with whatever life throws at you, right? Of course, life is very good at throwing extreme events at us, right? So, and that's true for me as well. I don't want to get into those things that have happened in my life, but there's many things that are complete kind of curveballs that are pretty intense, and so they unsettle you. But then you kind of bounce back, because you know the process, you know what needs to be done conceptually, what is the right attitude toward these things that are happening toward in your life, and so you kind of use those experiences to become even more strong, I think, at some level. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your question, Munand. I hope that there's something in there that was useful.
Raj, could you please repeat the 5 characteristic? Relaxed body, slow conscious breathing, open heart, sensitive sonar. What was that?
Mm-hmm. Sonar. Okay,
And
so first of all,
induction, integral. What was the last?
energetic. Right? Let me just type it out actually. So I don't know why, but Vijay talks about the very first feature as a foundation of a state of presence. The relaxed body is not one of those 5 things, right? So I don't know why he separated that out. Maybe because the other 5 are not so much to do with the body and more to do with the mind, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, anyway, so yeah, so it's maybe 6 features altogether. So the first one is foundation
Oh,
is a relaxed body.
I almost typed them, so just help me. I just want to finish. Yeah, so
Okay, you almost typed it. Okay, relaxed
yeah,
body, and then even breath. Okay, calm mind, open heart, um, sensitive sonar, and then energetic induction. I mean, those last 2 terms are overly scientific or something, um, almost technical or jargony. I don't know why. Again, he uses that, but so sorry, Maggie, you just sent me a link. I'm not sure what that is about. Let me see. Presence practice. No, 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 no. That's not the link. Let me send it to you again. Or maybe that's another kind of. I need to take a look at what that link is about. But um,
okay, Raj, can you please? I just put it in the chat. Is that correct? Hope it's.
okay, hang on. Relaxed body, even breath, calm mind, open heart, sensitive sonar, energetic induction. That's correct. Yeah. But this video, this link that I just sent you guys, that actually has that whole presence practice. And I just, just realized it. I was just looking at it this morning, and some, 18,000 people have seen it, so I don't know how they got to that video, but a lot of people have seen it somehow.
I really love the comment from from Krishna that if you add a couple of weights to the breathing technique, you can have it a workout.
Yeah. So I've taken a lot of different mindfulness classes from a variety of different people, and many people in India, perhaps even outside of India, know of this guru. His name is Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, and he's got this organization called the Art of Living, and his practice is called Sudarshan Kriya. Sudarshan means the right vision, I think. And Kriya means practice. So the right vision practice, which is all about breathing. And there too, in that set of breathing things that you're led through, one part is Bhastrika. Okay, but before the Bhastrika begins, there is this kind of breathing where you kind of hold your hands, your kind of fingers are touching, fingertips are touching, and kind of hold them in your kind of belly button area, and then you practice something called Ujjaya breath. That's spelled Ujjaya, which means victory breathing, and you guys can Google it. But it involves kind of almost closing your neck when you're breathing in, so that there's a kind of hissing sound that happens when you're breathing in and breathing out. So you do that for, I think, 8 rounds or something like that. And then you raise it to your chest level and do that for a few rounds. And then you kind of hold the fingertips on your shoulder blades in the back. And you do that. And that is actually, much more physically kind of, even though it doesn't sound like it when I describe it to you, right? But you try it out and it actually kind of, really does give you a bit of a workout. Okay. And it also expands your lungs out, so that you're able to suck in more oxygen, and it just physically improves your capacity to take in more air and therefore more oxygen. Yeah.
There's a nice definition of happiness from Jayan. My favorite definition of happiness is the ability to make a bouquet out of flowers within your reach.
That's nice.
Yeah, Raj, I thought that, well, about happiness doing something else, but at the same time, it could be applied to pleasure. Don't you think so?
Okay, so you broke up quite a bit there, Elena. Can you repeat that?
I like your definition about happiness, the one that you just gave us about I'd rather be doing this and be here rather than anywhere else or doing something else. But at the same time, I feel like it could be related to pleasure.
As in, you're more likely to feel that way when something pleasurable is going on?
Yeah. Well, if I'm doing something gives me pleasure, I could also say I would rather be doing this than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with pleasure, in my opinion, right? I mean, I actually have a research project where we are looking at whether if you lead a life of meaning and being kind of good in a almost like an ethical sense, right, where you are really truly authentically interested in the upliftment of everybody's well-being and you're not self-centered, right? If you lead that kind of a life, do you actually derive more pleasure out of life as well? Okay, so the idea being that if you lead a good life in an ethical, moral sense, do you actually find food to taste better? Do you actually find a warm shower to actually be more pleasurable, right? A sex, for that matter, to be more pleasurable, and things like that. And it's an interesting hypothesis, right? Because we tend to kind of think of that path of doing the right thing as a kind of a spiritual path that involves, this concept of self-abnegation, and you're deliberately not seeking things that are pleasurable, etc. But actually, going down that path might increase the amount of pleasure that you get out of life. And the Epicurean ideology is actually somewhat related to this. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that ideology. I'll send you guys. I'll see if I can find a link to a video on it. But there's a misunderstanding that the Epicurean ideology is, or philosophy is all about a life of pleasure. But in reality, I think it's more about accepting the pleasurable moments that come your way and enjoying them to the fullest extent. And that's one of the videos on the Epicurean philosophy that you guys might be interested in.
So
Anyway,
reminded
I don't know
me,
if that, huh? Go ahead.
so it reminded me of broaden and build theory. So if you have, by Barbara. So if
Yeah.
you experience positive emotions, then you kind of are likely to experience more of them, and then you're in a better state to
Right.
have more of
Right.
them, right?
Right. Yeah. But in that theory, I guess the positive emotions would not necessarily be the same thing that I'm talking about here as leading a noble or a good life, right? I mean, being, altruistic, etc. Um, that's more of a meaningful life rather than a positive life, I think. Anyway, I mean,
Mhm.
maybe I'm splitting hairs here, but the
Although
hypothesis.
she describes love as as an emotion, and love could be the connecting point between what you were saying and what she was
True.
describing.
Yeah, that is true. All right.
What would be the relationship to tantra practice, Raj?
Mm.
The
That's a
question from Kiris.
Yeah. So, honestly, I'm not an expert on tantra and things like that. I'm not an expert on a lot of the things actually. This presence practice too. The only reason I even did it today is because Swati is not here, right? But it's just a private practice that I have, and I thought that I would lead you guys through it. So, my understanding of tantra, again, take all of this with a grain of salt. I think that you're better off asking this question to somebody who's actually very, has done research on that topic. But for those of you who are not familiar with this word tantra, it's from India. It's part of kind of, Hinduism is just so big, right? I mean, it's part of Hinduism. I think it's more of a Shaivite tradition, meaning that associated with this one of the three big gods in the Indian pantheon, called Shiva. And my understanding of it is that um, are you don't deny yourself any pleasures, okay, but you also don't pursue them necessarily with a feverish edge. Actually, there's a story that I really like that kind of captures the essence of this tantra philosophy, and it goes something like this. Okay, there was a king in a, this is like a kind of a folklore, right? I mean, who knows when it happened, if it did happen, but there was this king who newly took over a kingdom from his father who had just passed away. And he was a very young king and he wanted to rule well. He wanted all his subjects to be happy, etc. And he started, doing what he thought was right. But very quickly things started unraveling and lots of unhappy people. There was, a lot of politics going on, famine and so on and so forth. And his father, before he passed away, had told him that, look, I mean, if you have a lot of trouble at any point, there is this saint who lives, quite far away from here in this forest, up on a hill in a cave, and just go and ask him for advice. So this guy thinks, okay, he remembers this, and he goes. It's a 3-4 day trek, and he takes his troop of soldiers with him, and they go over, and then they finally get to that saint, and they tell him that this is what is going on. What advice do you have? And he gives him some advice and he comes back and he implements it and it works like a charm, right? So he's very, very happy. And a few years later, a similar kind of thing happens, major upheaval, things are going really badly. So he goes and visits the saint again. And this time he says, you know what, why don't you just come and stay with me, right? Just stay with me for a few years, just so that I absorb all these life's big lessons. And then after that, I think that I'll be all set. So the saint considers it and he says, okay, I'm happy to do it, but on one condition, that whatever I ask for, you just give it to me with no questions asked, right? And the saint says, sorry, the king says, okay, fine. I think that should be fine. So he's wondering, what is he going to ask for, right? I mean, he's probably going to make requests that are going to be totally okay with me. So he comes back to the kingdom. The saint comes back with the king, and um, slowly the saint starts asking for things that puzzles the king. So he says one day that, hey, just give me lots of booze, so I want to drink a lot. And so he supplies it. He's just a little bit intrigued why, this guy's into drinking. I didn't think that he was, into consuming alcohol, but fine, right? So he does that. And then after a month or two, he says, I want drugs. I want, a lot of ganja. and he smokes up, and he's like dancing around, and then he starts asking for women, and the king is really puzzled now. He's like, what the hell? I thought this guy was like a saint and into asceticism and everything, and here he is. He seems like really a hedonist, if anything, now. And then the saint kind of crosses the line when he visits the king's harem, and he wants to have sex with the king's concubines. And the king is like really worried now, right? So he goes and asks the saint, what are you doing? I mean, this is really what you want to do? I thought you were a saint. And the saint says, that's it, I'm going now. So the king says, why? What happened? He says, I told you, no questions asked, right? If you ask a question, then I'm off. Okay, and the king then kind of apologizes, falls at his feet, and he says, I'm really, really sorry. I forgot about it. I shouldn't have asked that question. It's totally fine. Because in the meanwhile, he's also giving the king lots of advice that really work very, very well, right? So he's very insightful, very knowledgeable about how to, how to kind of run a kingdom. But a couple of months later, he wants to actually now sleep with the king's wife, with the queen, right? And the king basically loses it. He says like, screw away, screw off. I don't care. Okay, you really can't do this. What the hell is going on? And so then the guy basically packs up his bags and he's about to leave. And the king then starts kind of thinking about, maybe this was a wrong move on my part. Maybe it's okay for him to have sex with the queen. So what, because he's doing so many good things and giving me such great advice. So he starts kind of begging the saint again, can you reconsider, and so on. And the saint keeps walking away, right? And then he's walking for 2 or 3 days, and the king is following him, and he gets to the edge of the kingdom, and he's about to step into the forest and go back into his cave. And then the king finally kind of loses it. He says like, you know what, screw you. You're no different from anybody else. All these dissipate folks who basically lead a hedonistic life, right? In fact, you're, not a saint at all. What's the difference between you and, let's say, me? I mean, I like doing all these things and I do it, but you're the same. You've really fallen in my eyes. And the saint turns around and he says, you know what, there is a difference. I can walk away from it all. Okay, and then he walks away. So that's the idea of Tantra at some level, is that, embrace it, take part in everything life has to offer, but also be able to walk away. Can you do it? That's the question. So Osho Rajneesh, really was kind of touted himself as a master of this kind of philosophy. But I don't know if you guys have seen the documentary about his life on Netflix. It's really worth watching. I'm going to type out the name of the documentary. It's called Wild Wild Country. And you'll see that I think that he was a charlatan, although he obviously was very, very, I don't know if talented is the right word, insightful, whatever. But, the danger with the tantric ideology is that you can easily fool yourself into believing that you've arrived when you haven't. And giving into temptations and bodily pleasures, etc., has a tendency to make you addicted to them, right? And at the same time, the opposite of that, asceticism and abnegation, I don't think is the right idea as well. So, the Buddha famously said, the middle path, right? Everything in moderation. So I don't know, it's an attractive philosophy, Tantra, no doubt about it. What else?
Thank you, Raj. So here we have, somebody says, it's just like you who can give a set of breathing, meditation, relaxation techniques to suit one's needs and or comfort or liking, from Vidya. It's a compliment for you. So it's like being in the, we were talking before about the noble life and life full of, how did you put it? Aesthetical, no.
Ethical?
Ethically correct. So it's like being in the right, also when you're in the, as you were talking about the being in the right headspace at the previous session, Many things depend on that. So if you living the life full of love and, let's say, good things, doing good things, you're likely to, and as you said, the food tastes better just because you're on the other side of the balance, maybe, or you're in the balance, and so that's why everything
Yeah,
just
our hypothesis is that if you're leading that kind of a life, an ethical life, right, where you're not greedy, you're not selfish, and you're content with having enough, etc., then you are not distracted by a lot of thoughts. You're not. You're more likely to be in the moment, and so that then allows all your attentional capacity to focus on whatever's going on in the moment. If you're tasting food, then you're 100% kind of dispensing the taste rather than, while you're eating, thinking about, playing golf or thinking about work or whatever, right? So it just paves the path for you to be settled into a state of presence and mindfulness, if you lead a life in which you're being ethical, because that then permits you or gives you the freedom to not be distracted um, by negativity and anxiety and other thoughts. So that's the working hypothesis that we have. So we'll see, if it in fact turns out to be true. So sorry, I mean, I think I kind of cut you off there, Elena. You were, I think, coming up with your own hypothesis as to why that might be the case, I thought, or something
no,
like that.
no. I was just connecting the two things and thinking why it could be the case that the food tastes better, and I believe it's similar to being in the right headspace when you're perceiving the reality differently. So I noticed that when I'm in a good mood, I'm cooking different things. Like I cook and I want to decorate or I want to experiment, and I just for some reason do it differently, and I do it better and it tastes better. And when I want to choose clothes to put on, and when I'm in a good mood, I feel grateful. And after yoga, for example, I'm I'm combining my clothes in a new way that I had never tried before. So I even feel more creative, actually,
Mhm.
with the
Yeah, actually,
food,
there's
with the
lot of work
makeup.
on, yeah, a lot of work on feeling good and being more creative, and that actually has to do with the way our brain functions. So if there was a Time magazine article in 2003 or four or something like that, where they, had two kind of images side by side, and one of the images, both of those images were of the brain, but one a happy brain and the other a unhappy brain or stressed out brain. And what happens when you're stressed out is that the oldest part of our brain, which we kind of borrowed from our reptilian ancestors, the limbic system, it's kind of like the deeper part of the brain connected to our kind of, the the medulla oblongata, I think it is. Anyway, so that part of the brain is active, right? And that part of the brain is very good at making very gross black or white decisions, fight or flight kind of decisions. Um, and when you're happy, all parts of the brain are lit up, all parts of the brain are active. So it's almost as if you're more capable of drawing on all your life's experiences when you're feeling happy. Whereas when you're feeling stressed out, you're in this black or white mode. So, your brain doesn't kind of give you a lot of information or a lot of options on how to kind of navigate a particular situation when you're feeling stressed out. But when you're feeling happy, it throws all these ideas at you. Hey, why don't you mix this with this? You remember what happened in India, maybe Ran of Kutch, right? You had this kind of food and maybe you can try that, things
That's
like
what
that.
I'm doing, by the way. I'm doing my lentils.
Oh, you are. Yeah. So maybe we should close soon. I just wanted to mention that, I mentioned Ran of Kutch here. And last year around this time, just, maybe a month earlier than now, last year, Elena, I was very grateful to, have Elena join me and about 10
I
other
was
people.
grateful and honored to be there.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great trip, right? I mean, and there's a lot of research on how vacations just grow even more rosy with time, right, in your memory. And that's certainly true of this trip as well. And so we went to this area in India called Ran of Kutch. And I'll type out the spelling of that area. And you guys should check out photographs of the Ran of Kutch. It's a salt flat. It's almost like a moonscape or something like that. It's just really, really wonderful, especially when, against that background of white and kind of like, just relentless white for miles on end. You have people wearing colorful clothes like they do in that area in India. It just pops out. It's just really, really pretty. And Elena's Facebook profile picture is from the Ran of Kutch, I feel, if I remember correctly, right?
That's from the carnival, from the festival that we had.
On the festival, yeah, but it was still in that area. Anyway, so the idea was to scope out that area for what I was hoping would become a regular event, yearly event, and then COVID hit, right? And the event was going to be called a happiness camp. And so the idea was to just extend an invitation to anybody and everybody around the world who is interested in the topic of happiness to just come over there and just pitch a tent and hang out for about a week. And there'd be no money. I don't know if you guys have heard of Burning Man. So the idea was kind of similar to the how Burning Man functions, but basically no money. It's a kind of a gift economy, as it's called. Everybody brings something that they're happy to share with other people. You don't have to share, but you definitely want to bring enough to be able to survive yourself. And those are pretty harsh conditions there. You know, it's a salt flat. It gets very hot in the daytime, very cold at night. And so, you know, you'd have to be pretty hardy to be able to survive. So you bring your stuff. You also gift extra stuff to other people. It could be food. It could be water. It could be sessions on something that you're an expert on. Maybe you're good at carpentry, and so you teach people carpentry, or, you know, whatever it is. And so that was the idea. And so we scoped it out, and we're really happy with that place. And we'd have had to work out some logistics, but then soon after that, COVID hit, and we just put it in the back burner. And so we'll see if it actually happens in the future. I would love to be able to do something like that and have a lot of wonderful people like you from around the world join us. But, you know, maybe
That
it
would
won't
be
happen.
cool. And you know, I just thought that I think today is full moon, and the meditation that we were doing in the desert was exactly on full moon, remember?
That's true. That is
And
true.
today is the full moon, so
Yeah.
we all can take advantage and meditate tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Somebody sent a picture on WhatsApp of a full moon from his window. And I went out after I saw that, hoping to catch the full moon, but it's a cloudy day here today. All right. Wonderful, guys. Thank you very much for joining me again. And see you one last time for this workshop, at least next week when Swati will be back with us. Thank you, Elena, as usual, for moderating the questions and the post mindfulness part of this. And thank you, everybody, for joining me. I love you guys. Okay, take care.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
Raj. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, adios.
Bye bye.